And because we've got 1986 laws that only need to be enforced and funded. So our question is, why are we bringing these illegal aliens to the table?
Right.
And do you support any form whatsoever of what they call reform? No, just any reform.
Now,
immigration reform.
Code word for amnesty.
Correct. So, okay, thank you.
This is not complicated. You just enforce the law. Work. It's not complicated. And the way you handle the problem, the way you literally handle the problem, it's being done in Del Rio. And this is why we've got to restore the earmarks. I used to be able to send extra money to Del Rio because the federal judge in Del Rio enforces existing law. And the existing law says if you cross the border illegally the first time, it's 6 months in jail. If you cross the border illegally a second time, it's up to 2 years in jail. Now, obviously, the officer, the prosecutor, and the judge are going to use their good hearts and their common sense. They're not going to throw a woman and a little kid in jail. They'll just put them back across the border. Or some tragic individual with a terrible disease that's simply trying to get to a hospital or trying to get their child to the hospital. But the folks that cross the border illegally, all you've got to do is enforce the law. And by the way, the population in Del Rio is 96% Hispanic, and the judge is enforcing the law there with zero tolerance, so that anyone that is obviously not one of those categories that use their common sense and good heart, they may not get 6 months, but they get a couple of weeks, or they get a month, or they get some sort of punishment. I think I will use your chair here. Thank you very, very much. And if it dumps me, then be like one of those things at the fair, where you throw a ball and a guy goes in the water. So if I answer wrong, I'll just disappear. But I will assure you that the way I'm one of the House conservatives make up more than two-thirds of the Republican majority in the House. And we will not, we are not going to give citizenship to illegal aliens. It just doesn't make any sense. All you need to do, in my mind, it is common sense. If you just enforce the law, as Judge Livlin is doing in Del Rio, she's got overwhelming support from the local community. The crime rate has dropped 61%. The illegal crossings in Del Rio are at the lowest level they have ever been since they started keeping statistics. So if you live in Del Rio, your kids can play in the street. You don't have to worry about thugs or drug gangs or criminals running around. And I've got to restore the earmarks so I can send money to her, for example, to help her. And then secondly, and that's how you secure the border. It doesn't. They've got plenty of Border Patrol agents. They're tripping over themselves. They got plenty of. You don't need more Border Patrol agents. What you need is, like I mentioned earlier, you've got to have bed space, you've got to have marshals, you've got to have personnel for the courts, you've got to have additional courts. If you, for example, this is such an important question, forgive me, I promise I'll go as quick as I can, but this is important. If, for example, we all expect as Americans that if the Harris County Sheriff or the Houston Police pick you up and arrest you, I always tell kids they're getting an attitude test. When they get a ticket, y'all may know this, but if you get a ticket, you're being pulled over, you're being given the attitude test. If you pass the attitude test, yes ma'am, no ma'am, I'm sure, sorry, I didn't mean to do that, you might not get a ticket. But if you get an F- on the attitude test, you will go downtown and they can arrest you. So the point is that if you're arrested by a Harris County Sheriff or a Houston police officer, the odds are 90 to 95% that you will be prosecuted. That, the officer's judgment, there was a need for an arrest, he takes you, the person downtown, the DA looks at it. I mean, odds are if an officer picks you up, you're going to be arrested. Did you know that in Del Rio, they're prosecuting 65%. In Tucson, because they're only catching 3 or 4 out of 10. So think about this for a minute, and I'll stop and take a question. In Tucson, actually anywhere in the border, they're catching like 3 to 4 out of 10 people that cross the border. But if you're unlucky enough to get caught in Tucson, you only have a 4% chance of being prosecuted. That means you've got a 96% chance of being home in time for dinner. And they even they did it verbally, and they changed it once I found out about it, because if it weren't for congressmen going out there poking around and doing it, I don't think a lot of this stuff would happen. But I found out that in the Tucson sector, the local district attorney had set the word out that they would not prosecute anybody with a load that was less than 400 pounds. So guess what the evidence room is full of? You walk in the evidence room, and every single load is $3.99, $3.97, $3.78, $3.76. I asked the policeman there, I said, how long did it take the smugglers to get the memo? He said about 48 hours. So you just enforce the law with a common sense and a good heart. You have the bed space to back it up, and then the illegal crossings stop. And then once you secure the border, you've got to fix the visa system. And the visa overstays are half of the people that are here illegally. And if they've overstayed their visa, bye-bye. You deport the visa overstays, and then you fix the visa system so that you can... You fix the visa system so that it's easier to come here legally than it is to come here illegally. And then finally, for those folks that are here illegally, you need to do some sort of a Pasero work program. So the people, Mexico and Canada are our two biggest trading partners. They're members of NAFTA. And if you secure the border with common sense and a good heart, and you know that the only people crossing are those that you've tin printed, that you've got an ID, and they're only here to work. They have a work permit to come up here and work and into home. And they do not get access to any government benefits, no welfare, no food stamps, no nothing. And they're just here to work and go home. Then you pretty well solve the problem. And finally, you should know that, again, the Chronicle could care less. I actually put an amendment on, because it all comes down to the Appropriations Committee. How do you enforce the law? I put an amendment on the Agriculture Appropriations Bill that says any state that does not verify eligibility for food stamps or welfare loses all of their food stamps and welfare money. So you really solve the problem simply by enforcing the law. I've done it right here in the front row. Here's what I've done. Yes, sir, right here. And I'll come back over here. Yes, sir. And I'm going to see if I can't do this gentleman, and then let me see if I can't do 2-minute answers.
Lady over here.
Student loans. The student loan program, we made sure that the student loan rates do not increase and that they basically are tracking the market. Now, when Nancy Pelosi was Speaker and Obama was President, they changed the law and they turned the entire student loan program over to the federal government, which I think was a terrible idea. You can't go to a bank and get a student loan anymore. But at least the interest rates are not going to jump. We did pass a bill to keep the rates from jumping.
But I don't think we ought to be charging our students those kind of ethic rates. Elizabeth Warren had a better plan. You should not have our young people paying more than the banks are paying.
Well, I did student loans to get my way through law school, and I paid them all back. So it's a good thing, I think, to actually learn to undertake an obligation and then pay it back. I was going to take this gentleman right here. Yeah, the banks are making.
Why aren't we saying that we will loan money to our students, to our fellow Americans, to go get an education, to make this country greater, better, stronger, smarter?
Well, ma'am, I understand, but this gentleman had the floor. I need to answer this gentleman's question.
They will not solve it.
Yeah, I understand. I'll explore it, but this gentleman was next. Please. Yes, sir.
I'd like to know who believes and why the House has already included S-744.
Which one is that, sir? S-744.
They call it the amnesty.
Oh, the Senate. This is a great question, y'all. This gentleman is asking, why hasn't the House blue slipped the Senate immigration bill? It's a great question. What? Well, ma'am, I'm sorry. All of us need to do everything we can to be polite, and we will always have a civil conversation. All of us, because we're Texans, ma'am, we all wait our turn and answer and do everything civilly. But the gentleman is asking a great question, and that is why the Senate amnesty bill, the Senate immigration bill, which is an amnesty bill, is a publicity stunt. Because it contains tax increases, it's unconstitutional, it's illegal, and if Harry Reid delivers it to the House, we will instantly strike it down on a constitutional point of order or the blue slip that the gentleman's talking about. So you're exactly right. We're ready. No, he won't deliver it. It hasn't been delivered.
Okay, so it hasn't been delivered.
He will not deliver it.
John Bonner hasn't blue slipped it yet.
No, ma'am, no, sir. He won't deliver it because Harry Reid knows the bill is unconstitutional because the standard procedure is they've got a clerk that comes. I preside over the House periodically, and when you're in the Speaker's chair presiding, every now and then, you know, the Sergeant at Arms will come in and say, I have a message from the Senate, and the Senate has passed Senate Bill thus and such. And they actually formally deliver it. You know, all those rows of clerks in the front of the Speaker's chair, they literally physically deliver the Senate bill to one of those clerks. And Harry Reid will not do that. He passed a budget because we said you don't get paid unless you pass a budget. Again, if you control their money, yes, that's the first year they passed a budget in years, but they haven't passed a budget in a long time. And literally, if you control their money, their heart and mind follows every time. And I had a question back here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Congressman, I'm very happy to come out to meet your constituents.
Thank you for being here.
Running the gauntlet here.
Thank you, sir.
Remind everyone here that in 2001 you toured with Tom DeLay and Kevin Brady promoting a wonderful company called Enron. Do you remember that?
I remember touring Enron and thinking, boy, this place is flashy.
Yeah, and like everything that Enron did, Chase Bank is doing 100 times over.
Interesting.
900% gaming of the electricity market in California.
Really?
And there's also a law, Dodd-Frank.
Oh, what a disaster.
My question to him, which includes, by the way, entitled to the right to grab the deposits right out of your checking and savings account in the event of the meltdown of the derivative.
It's got that in Dodd-Frank?
Title 2, yes.
Catherine, track that one down. I want to see that.
My question to you is...
So we'll defund that. See, they may put it in the bill, but then what I'll do in the Appropriations Committee is the bureaucrat can't do... Yes, sir, go ahead.
Against Obama. Why are you with President Obama in your opposition to Glass-Steagall, which is the only thing that's going to protect legitimate banking?
I haven't said I oppose Glass-Steagall. I voted against the bailout.
Have you signed on to House Bill 129 yet?
I don't know which one that is, sir. I mean, I know authors and subjects, but I don't know. The bill numbers are hard to keep track of.
I told you about it personally, its predecessor at the King Street Patriots 2 years ago.
Okay, if you would, I'd love to have you come in and talk to me.
It says the government stands behind legitimate banking with the FDIC, but the trillions in derivatives and offshore money laundering, HS.
We're not backing all that up.
You're not going to back it up.
I'm with you. I think that sounds.
All these figures, the Fed is pumping $85 billion a month into these markets.
Into the mortgage-backed securities and derivatives.
No, the minute that's
You're right.
All the markets are going to crash.
Yes, sir. You're exactly right. It's a good question.
If you're not for Glass-Steagall, you're with Obama.
Oh boy, don't ever. I hope I don't ever get caught with Obama. That's a picture I don't want. Or me with Hillary. I would. What, sir?
That's from Lyndon LaRouche, by the way. It was right on Enron and he's right on this derivatives crash.
Okay, I'm not too sure about how many. Okay, I understand. I'm not. Lyndon LaRouche. I actually don't follow Lyndon LaRouche a lot. But if you could come, I'd be happy to learn. I'd be happy to learn more about Chase Bank. When Bush was there, I voted against the bailout in 2008. That was one of my best no votes. Voted against, of course, Dodd-Frank. What a disaster that was. And I had a chance.
Very recently, and threatened to pull 30,000 jobs out of Texas.
Okay. Come see me at the office because you've got a lot of detail. Come see me at the office. I can tell you that the bailout turned out, all the bailout did was wind up enriching all those banks. And they didn't loan any of it to any of us, all that money that they got. And the other scary thing in response to this gentleman's question to remember is that the Federal Reserve they're not only buying these mortgage-backed securities about $85 billion a month, but they are also capable of, and they have done to the tune of almost $1 trillion. This is really spooky. In addition to that sheet that I gave you, the Federal Reserve has the ability, as far as I can tell, it's just a guy at a computer keyboard, sits down and creates money out of thin air for the purpose of buying debt. You've got to let that sink in for a minute. The Federal Reserve is creating money to buy debt. Now, that is scary. And if you look, for example, at the money in your wallet, it's a Federal Reserve note. Now that's a debt instrument that was printed to cover the last debt instrument, which was printed and covered the last debt instrument. You get the point. All I'm telling you, that what keeps us up is the confidence of the world, the recognition that the U.S. economy is as strong as it is. I had a chance to ask the guy that does where you buy your own investments online, Charles Schwab. I had a chance to meet Charles Schwab, and I asked Charles Schwab, and I finally got a chance to. I'll go to you next, young man. I asked Charles. I promise. You don't have to hold your hand up. I'll get you next. I promise. I asked Charles Schwab, Mr. Schwab, if there were two things that we could do, you wave a magic wand and do it, what would they be to strengthen the American economy? He said, repeal Dodd-Frank and repeal Obamacare. Right. This gentleman right here. Yes, sir.
My question is regarding immigration.
Illegal immigration, yes, sir. Legal immigration, excuse me.
I came to the US like 9 years back.
Yes, sir.
I did masters from University of Alabama and
Sure.
graduated in 2006, and from the time I'm working for Halliburton.
Yes, sir. Great company.
My question is like, I'm waiting for my green card forever, like it's been like 8 years.
Yeah, it's absurd how long it takes.
I've been paying taxes for the past 9 years, I don't want any social
You touched all the bases, you've done it right.
Yeah, I'm not even eligible for social benefits, whatever. My question is okay, if you oppose any immigration reform, what's the way forward for, at least for legal immigration, guys, like people like me, that's running this process.
You should be on the fast track. A guy like you ought to be zip.
I graduated in 2006. My friends also graduated in 2006 along with me. They are like Koreans, they are Sri Lankans. They are all like their green cards. Because of per country, living per country cap.
Because of what?
Because of the per country cap. Every country they will give an employment category. They will give.
Right.
A country like India, 1.5 billion people.
There's a cap.
A country like Iceland, there are 200,000 people that give the same 10,000.
I didn't think there were 200,000 people in this. It's a great question. It's a good question. Yes, sir. His question is on legal immigration, and someone like him who's done it right, you waited 8 years for your green card, you're working for Halliburton, you've gone to school, you're paying taxes, you're not burdened to anybody. You're basically the exact kind of, you're an American. God bless you. We love having you. And it's something good, wonderful. And the answer would be that I would give you is a solution. We've got to fix legal immigration. You make it so that visas are it's easier to come here legally than illegally. Now, we've got to make sure who you are, of course. You got to make sure they've got the ability now to 10 print, and you identify who you are. And you, for example, if it's taken you 8 years, if you'll contact our office, we would love to help you, be happy to help you. There's no reason it should have taken 8 years. I'd like personally to know why they're dragging you out 10 years. And these other guys... Sure. Come see me and let me help. And the way I fix it nationally is you speed up the visa system, particularly for countries like Mexico or Canada or India or England or allies or friends. You obviously have an expedited system where you're still confirming who they are to make sure who they are, and you track them, and then make sure that if they're coming in on a visa, who they are and how long they're supposed to stay. But if they've applied for citizenship and applied to be here permanently, and you ought to already have had it by now. And I will help you to do the right thing. I can't hear you. It's a good question. I promise I'll help you. But it needs to be sped up for everybody. Let me go to this. Over here.
Hey, how about over here?
Over here. Oh, all right. Okay, who y'all want me next? You want this young man next? I'll get you next, sir. I promise. Let's see what this young man's got. Yes, sir.
Sir, my question is on immigration reform.
Sure, here. Hold the microphone like this.
You talk about...
Hold it right there.
You talk about the need to espouse or to reduce the deficit as well as...
I can't hear you. Hold it like that.
We talk about the need to reduce the deficit as well as increase the economy. However, first of all, bringing new immigrants, making the legal reform easier, as well as making students who are here at universities who are being almost forced back or are staying here illegally, that would greatly help the economy, as well as the Congressional Budget Office said that the Senate's bill would actually lower the deficit. Furthermore, the Senate bill is already a compromise. It's a bipartisan bill passed on the 70 votes. So why do you in the House oppose it?
Why do we oppose the Senate bill is essentially your question.
Yes, sir.
First of all, the Senate bill is illegal. The Senate bill can't even, I think the batteries are going out. There we go. The Senate bill is literally illegal. It's unconstitutional. It can't even be considered by the House because it raises taxes, and the Constitution says all taxes must originate in the House. So Harry Reid, this gentleman up here was asking me about that. Harry Reid has not even delivered the Senate bill to the House clerk because it's illegal, it's unconstitutional, and it's a publicity stunt. It's a publicity stunt.
Sorry, but sir, couldn't you simply just copy-paste the bill, put HR, whatever, and then pass it and send it back to the Senate?
No, the Senate bill is a disaster. I think you need to enforce the law, first of all, to start with common sense, law enforcement, fix the visa system so young people like this gentleman over here that works for Halliburton can come here. I'm answering your question. If you will, you secure the border with marshals, judges, beds, just the common sense stuff. And then, like this gentleman here who's been waiting 8 years for his visa, people that are from countries that are our friends, they've done everything right, you speed up the visa system so they can come here legally, and then you deport the visa overstays that are already here, and then you do some kind of a Pasero program, a work program, so people can come here legally to work and go back home. They just can cross the border and come into work in agricultural or service or construction or whatever they want to do, but you do not grant citizenship. The greatest privilege in the world is the most incredible, most significant privilege in the history of the world is American citizenship. If you don't get that, there's somebody that knows I'll follow up here. I really got to make this gentleman here. And I'm going to do my best to do 2 minutes. I'm sorry.
I came to this country 40 years ago.
Hold it just like this, sir.
I came to this country.
Got it. Short on it.
There you go. It's a peculiar microphone.
I came to this country 40 years ago for a better opportunity, and I made it my own.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that impressed me the most about this country is the respect for the law.
Yes.
And the sense of community and caring for one another.
Yes.
My concern today is seeing the opposition to the Affordable Care Act and being unable to reconcile caring for your neighbor and respecting the law with an opposition to defund Obamacare. Obamacare is the law of the land. And we should make it better, not to defund it. And if you have a better idea, a common sense idea.
Now hold it just like this, they can't hear you. The battery goes in now.
If you have a better idea about giving access to health care to people who cannot afford it,
yes, sir.
I'd like to hear it. And if you have something to improve Obamacare, I would like for you and all your congressmen to do it.
Okay.
Instead of just voting to review the law, and that's the only
It's a great question. It's a good question. You always want to, there we go. You always want to do more than vote no. You're exactly right. We're not just voting no to repeal Obamacare. We've got, for example, if you're have a pre-existing condition, we've got legislation that would set up essentially a high-risk pool that would allow states to do like we do in Texas. If you're having an automobile accident or you're a young person, you've got a high-risk pool for automobile insurance, you can set that up at the state level. You've asked me for alternatives. I'm telling you our alternatives. You may not agree with my alternative, but that's it. That's Obamacare. No, ma'am. I'm talking about doing it at the state level. You let the states do it.
Yeah.
It's not in the Constitution.
Our state has 6.5 million people uninsured, the highest rate of uninsured people.
Yeah, I hear you about the uninsured. 20 out of the worst. It's not the federal government's job.
Right. It's none of their darn business whether I want to buy insurance or not. They're just going to screw it up.
You know that today, I actually, in a conversation I just had with Methodist Hospital, this gentleman's been holding his hand up for all the whole time. I'm getting you next. I just had this wonderful visit to Methodist Hospital, and one of the things we were talking to the head of the hospital. I don't know what's going on with this thing. We were talking to the head of the hospital. I think this thing's dead. We were talking to the head of Methodist Hospital, and during the course of the conversation, now listen carefully. This is terrifying. He said, as all the institutions start to go under, we'll be okay, or we're going to do this or do that. I said, wait, back up. What did you just say? He said, when all the institutions start to go under because of Obamacare. Obama's care is designed to collapse the private insurance market. It's designed to Massachusetts. Now, oh yeah, Massachusetts. Now there's a good. That's not a role model I want to follow. Massachusetts. We're all going to have. Some of us are going to have disagreements. You may disagree with me, but I'm always going to tell you what I think. I'm always going to follow my core principles. And I can tell you, health insurance is none of the federal government's business, and we're broke on people.
Congressman, I'd like to applaud these gentlemen right here.
Yes, sir. Our Boy Scouts.